All right, now we want to add persistence here. So first we need to inject our DB context in the constructor of our controller. Vigo, DB context, let's import it, call it context. Now initialize field from parameter. Beautiful. Now back in our action, here we have a vehicle object. So we want to add it to our context and save the changes. So context.vehicles, we don't have this property, so we need to add it. Let's go to Vega DB context, add a new DB set here. So prop DB set of vehicle and call it vehicles. Now back here, vehicles dot add, we add this vehicle object here, and context dot save changes. Or we can use the async version, save changes async. So we need to await this, add async modifier here, and change the return type to task of iActionResult. Let's import the namespace. Okay, save. Now let's test the result. So back in Postman, here's our input object, a vehicle resource. Note that here we don't have an ID property for our vehicle. So when we call our API, if everything works, we should see the ID of the newly created vehicle. So send. So we couldn't get any response from the server. Now if you look at the terminal, you can see this exception, self-referencing loop detected. So basically here in the controller, we are returning a vehicle object, which is part of our domain model. And as you saw earlier, here we have bidirectional associations. So a vehicle has many vehicle feature objects, and each vehicle feature has a reference back to the vehicle itself. So now, because we're dealing with Entity Framework, after we call save changes, some of these references are populated. So we have a loop in our domain model, and that's why JSON serializer cannot serialize this. But we shouldn't return a vehicle object in the first place, because as I explained, the input and output of our APIs should be API resources. So here we need to map this vehicle object back to a vehicle resource. So let's go to mapping profile. We need to create a new map, this time from domain to API resource. So vehicle to vehicle resource. Now here we need to do the reverse of what we did earlier. So for member, vehicle resource dot contact, we want to map this from our vehicle. Now here we need to create a new contact resource object and set 3 properties. So name is going to be vehicle.contactName, email is going to be v.contactEmail, and phone is going to be vehicle.contactPhone. So we get these 3 properties from our source object, which is a vehicle object, and initialize a new contact resource object with them. And then we get this contact resource and set the contact property of the vehicle resource. And similarly, we're going to map the features. So for member, vehicle resource dot features, this is a collection of integers. So operation.map from, we go to our vehicle object, we get vehicle.features, which is a collection of vehicle feature objects. So here we're going to use link to get only the feature IDs. Dot select, from each vehicle feature, we get vehicle feature dot feature ID, like this. Okay, so this is our mapping. Now back in our controller. So after we save the changes, we want to map this vehicle object to a vehicle resource. So mapper.map vehicle to vehicle resource. And we give it this vehicle object, get the result and store it in a separate variable. And finally, we return this result object. Let's see if this works. So back in the Postman, send request. Okay, we got a 200 response, beautiful. And you can see this vehicle, its ID is 4. So previously, before recording this video, I created 3 vehicle objects. Now if I click send one more time, the next vehicle, its ID is 5. So this verifies that we successfully stored vehicle objects in our database. Just one last thing. In our controller, I forgot to set the last update property of this vehicle object. So vehicle.last update, we're going to set this to datetime.now. So this is our happy path and it's working fine. Next, we're going to implement validation.